How's it going, Amazon class? It's your professor here today to talk to you guys about what you guys have gone through. So we just went over the front end development section, which is your first class, and now we're on your second class, our second section. And here I want to talk to you guys about what is SQL. So we just did the creativity of the front end development, the UI, the user experience, and user interface. So here we're going to cover topics about the SD 102 MS SQL and database design course. So in this course you will be learning the fundamentals of SQL language. In this course you will create and use relational database to store the data our web application need in order to function. So this course leaves behind the web browser, HTML, CSS, and JS to focus on the backend, how the data is stored. So this course prepares you for the exam offered by Microsoft, which will enable you to go ahead and make a career, something that you love doing. So this is going to be the back end part, right? So we just did most of it. We did a little bit more on the, again, reiterate, we did the front end. Now we're on the back end, which is going to be a lot more about database. So you will have the opportunity to take the exam at the end of the program. To get the most of this course, we will recommend you dedicate at least 4 hours per week to review what you learn in class and practice your skills. I recommend that you guys go ahead and do 20 hours. So do not miss the class and do not fall behind in completing assignments. If you miss a day, you miss a lot. So you guys already know the topics of key terms, lesson files, additional resources, and further learning. I'm not going to go ahead and repeat myself there. So what is a SQL database? So SQL database store all the data an application needs to operate. Web apps often need to store a large amount of data in order for it to function. For example, this could be data about users, products sold on the website, or almost anything else. So SQL, pronounced sequel or SQL, stands for Structured Query Language. So you're going to query in data and you query out data. SQL database gives us a permanent a way to permanently store the data a web application uses and then retrieve the data again anytime it's needed. So SQL-based solutions are the most universal and widely used way to store large amounts of data. So SQL is a relational database. This means data is stored in tables and the data stored in one table is related to data in another table. If you ever use a spreadsheet program, SQL tables look very similar. They are made up of rows and columns. Every row is a single record of the table, and each column is a field of data that holds information. So for example, we might have a table called person that looks similar to the picture below. So here, this is exactly what SQL is. You're going to have a table, and now you're going to have your unique IDs, and then you're going to have your characters, your numbers, your strings, and so forth, right? So number one, in our database table, each record is assigned a unique number. Each record is made up of many columns or fields that describes one small piece of information about the record. So a large database can be made up of hundreds or even thousands of tables and millions of records. In the Microsoft SQL database, no matter how big the database is, all the data, tables, and records are stored in just 2 files on the computer. So 1 and 2, you're going to have your .mdb database file that holds the database data. And then you're going to have your .log file that holds the log information about the database. So here, again, I'm going to give you guys a quick picture or snippet of how it's supposed to look. So here you have your DB1 log. And here is a great diagram. So first SQL Server instance, go ahead and go to my DB, and then go ahead, it goes to these 2 files group. So a SQL Server is a software installed on a computer that manages the database and keeps the database running. A single computer running SQL Server can have many databases loaded on it. So tip: data versus code. In our first course, we learned about what JSON is and what code is. So code is what you write in text and makes the application function. So data is the information your code processes in order for it to perform tasks. So here, key terms I want you guys to remember is structured query language, relational database, row column, .mdb, .log file, and SQL Server software. Okay, so what is data persistence? So in this example, here's a Nintendo example. Quick brief of what it is. It's like whatever you save, it permanently saves, right? And then whenever you open, everything is there for you to go ahead and continue your information or your logging or whatever you need to do, right? So we choose to use SQL database because we expect a large amount of data will be stored by our web application. So that's just a little bit about data persistence. So let's go ahead and move on to why SQL. Okay, so why does a web developer need SQL? So there's a lot of reasons why you need SQL. As a full stack web developer, it's important to have an understanding of SQL, right? If you're going to be a full stack web developer, that means you know everything about everything that creates a stack. If you're just going to be one, tech, which would be a SQL or would be a JavaScript, then you would just be a JavaScript, developer, things like that. So here we follow this rule called CRUD: create data, read data, update data, and delete data. So when your website needs to create, read, update, and delete data, it will often work with the SQL Server and database to perform the operation. So finally, most experienced web developers will tell you that the database is the most critical part of the web application. If the data from the database is lost or stolen, it can mean a lot of millions of dollars from the company. If the database is slow and doesn't perform well, then now you're gonna have an issue with a bottleneck. Now, a well-designed and organized database can make the job of writing code much easier. So additionally, there are many jobs available to people with strong SQL skills. So in addition to full stack, learning SQL can help you get a job as a data analyst or even a SQL Server admin. So key terms right here is relational, flat file, or file-based, and non-relational, right? And there's going to be a lot of careers for you guys to join, like business intelligence, data scientists, and big data. Those are some of the type of careers you could use. Just having experience with SQL. So the most common type of database is relational. SQL database. Data is organized into tables, and the tables are made up of rows and columns. Just like in Excel, right? Tables are related to each one another in some way. For example, a database might have two tables called person and sports. So here you have your person and sports. And then they can have a column field called favorite sports, and that points to the sports table, right? So here, relationship between a person and their favorite sports. A way to read this is that with person with ID 1, such as Linda Green, has a favorite sport of ID number 2, football. Right, so here it just shows that this is directed to football. This is the vast majority of web apps use relational SQL database. There are many different flavors of SQL Server software made by different companies and organizations. This course uses Microsoft SQL, so we're going ahead and get very proficient with MS SQL Server. Other SQL software includes MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Oracle. So these versions are similar, but will have syntax difference between them. Once you learn one, you will be able to perform most of the standard tasks when working with different SQL software without much effort. So a newer technology that's growing and popular, but not as popular as SQL, is NoSQL, which means non-relational style of database that's very different and will be beyond the scope of this class. Lastly, there is a file-based or flat file. This is where data is saved into simple text files. We see an example of flat files already with JSON. Applications that don't need to save large amount of complex data might opt for flat files. So spreadsheets, software, photo editing programs, video games are all examples of applications that use files instead of database. Flat files are not a good option for web apps because it would be too difficult to manage and saving our data into hundreds of thousands of different files. So key terms: relational, flat file, file-based, or non-relational. Let's go ahead and jump over to SQL terminology. So before we dive deeper into SQL, let's get some terminology out the way so we can talk like a SQL expert. So in these screenshots, don't worry about how understanding code is shown. We just want to focus on terms. So a query statement is a question written in SQL language. So to give an answer from the database, a query is also sometimes called a SQL statement or a SQL command. So here, who are all the actors? From the first name is Nick. So you start from select star from here. Where, so here this dictates first name equals Nick, so here you just locate Nick. Schemas, The database schema describes how a database is organized. The schema is made of all the tables and columns and relations to the database. Kind of think of it as a drop-down menu here. Everything in the picture below above is part of the database or schema or structure. Tables in the database, columns in the tables. So a table holds all the records about a thing. You will notice tables are almost always nouns. Tables are always paired as person, place, or things, such as cat, student, things like that. Column and field. A column in a table represents one piece of data, such as first name, last name, or date of birth. A row. So this is column. This is row. A row is a table represent one single unique record in the database. So DML, you guys, very important that you guys know this, is that data manipulation language. DML are SQL queries that read and write changes to the data stored in the database. Example of DML are select, insert, update, and delete. We'll talk about each of these different steps. And first part of the course, your DDL, which would be part of which you're going to be changing in the data design language, SQL commands that create a new table, add a new column, or change the database structures in some way. Our DDL commands will cover these commands in the second part of the course. So example, create a new table called sports with column sports ID and sports name. You go ahead and use create table, and then inside here you just go ahead and do the DDL sports ID integer, sports name, variable, character, maximum. So here transaction. A transaction is one of the unit work that makes changes to the database. So think of it as a set of changes to the database. So transaction might be made of multiple queries or just one. A transaction can just change just one row or millions of rows. So example, start a new transaction. Please update the active table. Set the actor's first name to John for the actor with ID 44. Commit this change to the database. And so here you're going to begin an update, set first name, where, and then you're going to commit. Okay. Scalability, we understand what scalability is in technology. As technology grow, we scale up and size up real fast. So SQL, if our database can handle 100 million records in SQL, we're able to say that the database is scalable. So data integrity. So data integrity is a concern that our data is accurate and consistent. While data integrity is a large topic, we'll illustrate an example of data integrity gone wrong. So notice here, everything seems smooth. But the age, right? Every age should have a number. And then here, number 6, snowball has a text, black and white. That is not a number. Again, same with favorite sports. Everything's a number, and here this is a text. So this is what data integrity have. This table has issues, so we call this data integrity. A regular list can create all kinds of issues for websites trying to process data. So DBMS, which stands for Database Management Software System, it's a particular version of SQL Server, such as Microsoft SQL, MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Oracle. So the asset properties of a SQL database. In order to ensure data integrity, SQL must pass what we call the acid test. So understand that there's nothing you have to do to achieve this. SQL just works this way. If you write SQL code that violates the acid properties, SQL will throw an error and not allow your code to execute. So atomic, if any field or record fails to update, the entire transaction or change should be disregarded. For example, if a transaction makes 10 changes and one change fails, no changes are applied. So consistent. Changes made to the database should follow all the rules of the database schema. For example, if a field requires a number, the change cannot insert text. So isolated changes made to the database should not be seen or felt until the change is complete. A large amount could take several seconds or even minutes to complete. Durable changes made to the database should be stored in log, turned off the SQL server, or losing power won't lose data. So here you have your asset properties, atomicity. Each transaction is all or nothing. Consistency, data should be evaluated according to the defined rules. Isolation, transactions do not affect each other. Durability, committed data will not be lost even after power failure. So system database. MS SQL Server. MS SQL comes with 4 databases needed in order for SQL to function properly. These tables are shown below. They are required for SQL to work normally. We don't have to touch these databases, and they are best left alone, but it's good to know what they are and what they do. So here you have your system database. You have your master, host system and configuration data. You have your temp DB, host temporary data needed to operate, model, a template to create a new database, and MSDB schedules jobs, alerts, and maintenance. So here you have your masters. The master database records all the system level information for a SQL Server system. This includes login accounts and system configuration settings. SQL Server can not start without this database. TempDB holds temporary data SQL needs in order to operate. SQL Server can't run without this database. Your model, the model database is used as a template for all database to create an instance of a SQL Server. SQL Server can't create new database without it. So MSDB, the MSDB database is used for scheduling alerts and jobs and performing maintenance operations. SQL servers can't run automated tasks without it. So now that we're where we are, you don't have to worry too much. If you really want to get interest of getting more in depth with administrating some of these, you go ahead and just learn about these four databases. So here are key terms you guys want to know: is query, schema, table, column, row. DML, which stands for data manipulation language. DDL, data design language. Transaction, scalability, data integrity. DBMS, asset master, TempDB, model, and MSDB. So intro to database, you guys could go ahead and read that. And introduction to SQL Server database gives you a little brief version of it. Let's talk about 1.4 Management Studio, SQL Server Management Studio. SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS, is a software tool used to manage SQL Server. SSMS allows you to connect to SQL servers, manage database, and write and run queries, perform transactions, and much more. So SSMS will be our primary software tool for working with SQL. In order to execute SQL code and make changes to the database, we must run the code in SSMS. In order to write and save SQL files in Visual Studio Code, we could only run the code in SSMS. So to launch SSMS, go ahead and download this right here. And if you already have it installed, don't worry about it. So install it, and go ahead and just there's a lot of different ways for people to have this have their software updated. So yours might not be localhost, so like mine's. So mine's would be Dragon, because that's my computer's name. And then go ahead and download the server SQL Express from Microsoft's website, and just download that, and then download the Server Management Studio and have those two running, and then go ahead and connect to Object Explorer. So I'm gonna do it again. Connect Object Explorer. Make sure your server type is database engine. Make sure your server name, if you can't find it, go ahead and just put browse for more, and then you could just drop down the schema, drag in that's my database engine, and put OK. Make sure your authentication is Windows authentication, your very first one, and just put connect, and here it will connect to your server. So it just should be local, right? So again, it's just showing you what I just did earlier. So here it's showing you that this right here is going to be your query window. Number 2 is your results window. Number 3 should be your Object Explorer. Number 4 should be your new query. Number 5 should be your execute. Number 6 is your parse. And number 7 is your database. Okay. And this is what it's just telling you what to do. And then I forgot about number 8. This is going to be your status bar. So whatever status and update, this will be located here. So let's practice creating and running a query. So click on the new query button, and the window will type the following exactly shown. So put select star from system database. Click the execute button, and the results window will return. So again, if you go ahead and just put, I already have it, so I'm just gonna open the folder. I have it in lab 1, and it's query 1. And what I'll do is just type in select star from system.database, and I just put execute, and the results should come up as all these database that returned. So now you run your first SQL query. This query lists all the database installed on the system. Now let's look at the Object Explorer window. The Object Explorer window shows us all the SQL server that we're connected to, and will display the database and schema. This is a good way to explore a new database, learn how to set it up. So here again, just showing you guys, go ahead and open, all the way drop down to your tables. Again, drop down all the way to your database, and it just shows you all what you have there. So your tables. Click on a new query button, go ahead and just select star again, and you go to execute, and you can just show that this something about what the CPU is handling. Alright, so again, I could just go ahead and open this database, system database. I could open masters, tables, and just shows you all the system tables or whatever. And I already wrote this down, so I'll go ahead and open another file for you guys. So here, Select start from spd.monitor, execute, and here it just shows you all whatever it ran, right? So here it has no errors, 53 connections, packets sent 39, packets received 39, idle at 7K, input output, and CPU, right? Okay. And here I want you guys to remember key terms: query window, results window, object explorer, and SSMS. The last one but not least is your install course database. Okay, so here I want you guys to talk. Right now our SQL server has only 4 system database, but those aren't very helpful for learning SQL. We want to avoid messing with them, so we created some new database to populate them with data. So go ahead and download this from the Encora website. You go ahead and download World, Sakila, and Chinook. So World will be something, all the data about the world. Sakila will be about books, movies, actors, and then Chinook would be about music, artists, albums, and these are just all the database that we're able to manipulate, right? So I tell you guys go ahead and download all that, right? And then after which you guys have that, drag into your folder, and then you should have about these 3 things. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the file. So here you should have Chinook, SQL, Sakila, and server. And when you open it up, right, you're gonna have a big list of like data that you could have. So here it has all the values. You could change some of the datas, right? And just execute in here. It'll just populate into your schema, right? So here you'll have Chinook, and then you go ahead and do it with Sakila, and then world, and just execute it, right? So for another example, Sakila, all the database execute, and it's gonna be populated inside the schema. All right, so after which you can refresh it. This is the refresh button, and it will refresh back up. Have your database and things you guys remember, and you guys have to remember it, but just download these 3 things from Encora website, and that should be covered for our lesson 1. Also, make sure you guys, when you guys are turning your labs, make sure you do your documentation. Type your title, type your name, your date, the class, and then my title, and then my name, and then go ahead and do screenshots of the program, and then screenshots of the code, and then write a summary, right? So those are the things that you guys are going to be turning into the lab. And make sure it's a PDF or Word document. And then when you guys are starting to create your own database and unique stuff, go ahead and zip it up and make a zip folder, and go ahead and send me the program itself. That's all. So anyways, wish you guys the best. Go ahead and stay quarantined, do whatever you guys need to do, whatever, and happy coding. All right.